That's unfortunate.
I'm a very
Yes.
powerful man. I got a left hand, the left hand of God. I play God
Our
hand.
weaker
That's what I'm
guests
trying
would
to say.
not
I
be
played
able to
God
do
hand
this.
one time.
Who can we make fun of? Who's our previous guest? Like Adam Millard would not have last 10 seconds holding the microphone. His hands are too frail and weak and
Don't
limp.
be mean to
Yeah.
Alex.
What kind
Like,
of
hear me, hang on,
architect
hang
can't
on.
hold
I'm
a
not going to take the
tool
piss out of
for
the fucking
extended
creative director of
hours?
Sable. Let's go with Adam Millard.
I can take the piss out of him. That generous motherfucker sending a picture of a book to Darkfry. Why not the book?
I don't.
Okay,
have the
so
book.
here's
I
the
think
thing,
I have
right?
the book as well.
So here's
That was
so here's the thing, right? Greg, that's what I call him now because we're
Because we're-
friends.
we're tight like that.
You said Greg, it's so much stink.
Greg.
Greg. Like it had
Greg.
it sounded bang on like Tom from Succession. Greg.
Correct. It's like how Americans say Craig.
Listen,
They don't say
Craig.
Craig. They say
Craig is a real
Craig.
name. Craig
Yeah,
is
they
a
say
real
Craig
name, and there is no
instead
way
of
you
Craig.
can say that name without sounding insulting. So
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
kind
know.
of hard. I think at baseline, it has like
It's
It's
because it has
specific
all the
energy.
elements of a good curse word to it.
Yeah.
yeah,
It has
it's got
the
R,
hard
it's got a hard ending. at
Yeah,
the-
it has
yeah.
it has weight. It lets you go with the R. And then you
It
have
ends
and
in
then
a-
you have a non-euphonic vowel. It's like it's just it's an
All
inverse
the
fuck.
components of that.
It's the inverse of the word fuck. Craig.
That's amazing. Oh god, can you imagine? Just like
So,
babies
so
being
you
born.
mean to tell me
what
that
do we call
fuck
it?
equals
Fuck.
minus Craig?
Yes. If you multiply Craig and fuck together, you
You get minus one.
still get a positive or something. However math works. No one
All
knows.
right,
I'm
anyway.
an
The
accountant.
math of rude sounding word.
Yeah.
All right, so Greg.
Add one fuck.
That's Grigorios Kythreotis, the
Subtract
creative
Greg.
director of Sable, or one of our previous podcast guests. He sent me a book. He sent me a picture of a book he bought, and that book is a history textbook of a fictional world of an alternate universe Cyprus that was established off of the coast of Japan.
How does that happen?
So it's like it's written like a history textbook, but if it's a history textbook of a Cyprus that doesn't exist in an alternate in an AU
Fascinating
basically.
choice.
Does old Cyprus still exist in this book, or did all of Cyprus just
I
say,
don't
"Well, we're
know.
moving"?
It's called Neo Cyprus.
Okay.
That's
I'm going
amazing.
to I'm going to assume they did the SpongeBob Patrick meme in real life.
Yeah.
We'll just pick up Cyprus and move it somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know, but
You know,
it's-
sometimes you have to do a casual move an entire landmass.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's easy.
yeah.
Everyone grab one bucket of dirt. We'll make 2 trips.
Maybe 3.
So-
if, comes down to it.
Yeah, it's written by 2 British Cypriots. And it's basically like making up a fictional version of the history of Cyprus. It's fascinating. I hope it's a good book. If he will tell me if it's good, and if it's good, I will buy it too. Because
we gotta
it's
add
such an
that
interesting
it's
idea.
2 British Cypriots who are obviously weebs.
By the way, I told this to Greg. I told this to Gregorios. I almost called him Greg again, like as a joke, but
Greg.
I don't call him Greg. I told this to Gregorios, and he loved it. And he didn't know about it, but in Cyprus, we have a term for British Cypriots.
Really?
Yeah, we have a
Interesting.
term
Makes sense.
for British Cypriots, and specifically the ones that moved to Britain
It's mulatto.
after 1974, after the immigrated there as refugees after
Oh, God,
1974. We have a term for them. We call them Charlies. So
Okay.
But it's only specifically Cypriots who moved to Britain. So that's
Or
an
Cypriots
interesting
born
thing.
in Britain.
yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that specifically, but yeah, we call them Charlies, and he found that hilarious because it is.
I
See-
would want to explore the depths of why Charlie. Yeah, why Charlie?
I don't know.
See, I don't associate
Why not
Charlie
Craig?
with Englishisms.
I don't know. It's I guess it's just a name that was chosen to represent British people in the mind of Cypriots. I don't know. I don't get it, but I just think it's funny.
These fucking Charlies. Moving to Britain.
So like yeah, like my dad will literally would literally tell me like, oh hey, we're going to meet like a relative of yours that you've never seen. He's a Charlie.
That's a very confusing sentence if you
That's
don't
right.
know your relative's name
What's
yet.
his name? Charlie.
Hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna go see your friend Charlie. He's a Charlie.
He's a Charlie. He's in the military as well. It's all very confusing.
We're gonna see your friend Charlie. He's a fucking Craig.
Absolutely fucking Craig.
Craig.
Well, you gotta break a few Gregs to make it up. So
Rumble
that's a
it.
line from Succession that's really funny. I can't stop thinking about Tom and Greg now.
Oh my gosh.
Is Craig like the male Karen?
Yeah.
Mm,
I don't know.
I feel like we
Fucking
have
Craig
a word
came in
for a
the
male
store.
Karen. I can't think of it right now, but I think we got a male Karen word already.
No.
Kevin. I don't know.
No.
I think-
don't bring Kevin into
I
this.
think we just call males,
The episode.
not him. So you can't make
No,
fun of
yeah.
Kevin because he
I
could
forgot we
actually
know
come
you,
to
Kevin.
my
You
house.
know if you go, okay, we gotta think of a name. Nobody knows anybody of anything.
I
Toby.
feel like,
That-
I mean, I feel like there's a couple ones that kind of exist that aren't the same specific vibe, but have like a similar negative connotation of like this is a very specific type of person that's generally privileged and obnoxious, like your Todds, you know, or a Chad. Like those
Keith.
are definitely terms.
The first-
Keith.
Yeah.
Keith
Yeah.
is definitely one the internet
Keith
uses
is
a lot.
the one.
The problem is, I just instantly think of Todd Howard, and then everything is ruined.
Todd
I'm like,
Todd
he wouldn't-
Howard
he
is a
wouldn't do
Todd.
that, would
He
he?
has Todd energy though.
He meets
It's
Skyrim.
bad
like-
vibes, okay? Fallout runs because of Fallout technology.
You see that crater?
What
You
is
can
it?
go to that crater.
go
We
to the
call it
crater.
Bethesda Game Studios.
4 times.
We made
All right,
mine
you know-
5 times.
All right, look.
They made
making
fun of me in
Todd
high
Howard
school
is
because
a
I was like
rabbit
on
hole.
the
I'm
chess
fucking
club.
pulling the
I was
plug
actually
here.
in the chess club.
Hello.
It's also very easy.
Hello.
Oh yeah, we're doing a podcast, aren't we? Forgot about
Yeah,
that.
we're doing a fucking podcast. Anyway, let's try this again.
Video Gems.
Hello, and welcome to Video Gems, the podcast where we break into your house and organize your possessions in alphabetical order. I am your host, Darkfry the Ninth. I'm joined by my wonderful co-host once again, Harold from Video Games Are Bad, and
Good evening.
Aronach, who has a spooky red background today.
I'm hanging out at my parents' place because it's Canadian Thanksgiving.
Canadian Thanksgiving. Okay.
Canadian.
With
Which is
Canadian
separate-
gravy.
It's I was actually googling into the history. It's a separate holiday that came out of basically like harvest festivals, like, and has like slowly been, like visually subsumed by elements of American Thanksgiving because American culture is sort of, it's like a mold. It just kind of grows
Plague.
over.
The winds blow north.
Next, we'll have Americans on this podcast. Speaking
All right,
of which,
so
I'm pretty sure I'm one of those. I haven't checked recently.
I was gonna say.
wait a minute, we have a guest.
hang on.
Hello.
What? Who the fuck are you?
Who's this?
See, you know what? That's such an important question that you asked there, Darkfry, and I thank you for asking it, because the great thing about our nation is our ability to ask questions, and speaking freely is the right of every God-given American across the entire globe, whether or not they were born an
God-given
American. Yes, God-given American, as we all are.
God personally hand delivers every child like a
Every
sword.
American
You
child.
can say whatever you want.
He's floats down from a cloud on the back of a stork. The
my
stork
God-given
kick flips it
American has a
into
right.
the chimney of the hospital, and a nurse catches him, hands him to the mom, and the mom says, "Thank you, Jesus, for this child. I'm now going to go buy some clothes at Kmart." And that
And
is
then
the
Jesus
story of
says to the mom,
Thanksgiving
"That'll
in
be
the United States.
$10,000."
My name's Socratetris on the internet. It's Alex in real life.
All right, I said I'll say it, and I will say it. I hate your name.
Good.
All right, moving on.
I think this might be the most combative beginning of any of these episodes, and it's purely
Good.
just because we all know each other well enough that
So,
like
Yeah.
You can just tell this.
this episode will have a unique.
Who needs to
All
be
right.
friendly? You're all my friends.
all right, so let me explain myself, right? So, Socratetris, obviously, supposed to be like a portmanteau
That's correct.
of
Good French. I know you love French.
Socrates and Tetris, but like combining those two implies that Tetris is pronounced Tetris.
Yep.
Socrates.
So it's Socrates Tris.
You want to make it? You want me to make it worse on you? When I first started the channel, I was afraid of getting sued because there's a legal history behind use of the word Tetris, and I didn't want to be exposed to that, so I actually spelled it instead of an I with an E. So it was Socra Tetris.
That makes sense. You can't call anything Tetris these
Socratetris.
days.
Socratetris.
Are you okay, Darkfry?
Socratotros.
I think we killed Darkfry.
Or as Super Eye Patch Wolf once read my comment on one of his streams, Socalopolis. Something like that.
I feel like it would be a
Beautiful.
funny
That's
name.
Greeker
You know, like
than your name.
You know when
More
people
Greek
do these.
than me, yeah. He accidentally did it.
You know when people do these like exaggerated.
you said it yourself earlier. There's no good way to pronounce your name in either Greek or English.
Yeah.
And-
So
and
that's
that-
why I started capitalizing the T and I changed the E back to an I. To give people a hope, a chance of ever seeing that it's two words smashed together. Socra Tetris. Just switch which tongue you're using multiple times throughout the word.
Yeah. So like you'll have people either calling you Socra or Tetris.
I stop every person who calls me Tetris.
Good,
I
you
am
should,
not
you
a
should.
falling block game about the proletariat rising and overcoming.
Okay, so have you ever had anyone? Have you ever had anyone like in an email or something, or when someone reaches
like a
out to you in a
sponsorship
DM
email.
or in a comment maybe, say Mister and then the latter half of your name? So like
Mr.
Actually, yes.
Mister
Yeah.
Mr. Tetris.
Actually, yes, because I have gotten some bot emails that
Yeah. Hi,
auto
Tetris.
pulled Tetris from somewhere where I had to list the Sakura and the Tetris as first and last name. And so I have, in fact, received a bot email that said, Mr. Tetris, we have a great offer for you to review
man
our
himself.
microphone. All you have to do is click this link and input your information to be sent to the microphone for you to review. And I'm like, this is a scam. Delete.
I thought you were gonna say, "Ooh, very enticing." I feel like I could
Hot
use
Cider
that for
sent a
podcast.
DM where it was like Mr. Cider.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the best one of that is Hot Cider when his like Twitter name was Honk Cider, and then he got a DM saying, "Hi Honk." That's so good. I'm pretty sure it's his like Twitter banner. It's still there.
Hello.
Hi, Honk.
Hi Honk.
Hello.
I thought you
Honk.
were going to say he got a DM saying, can I honk your cider?
Can I honk your cider?
Aw.
She honking on my cider.
Oh no. Okay, moving on. YouTube videos on the internet.
Wait a fucking minute.
But
Wait a fucking minute. Wait, you have said who you are. Why the fuck are you here?
Why am I here?
Yeah.
You know, that's a very important question, Darkfry, and I'm glad you asked it, because in this country of ours, the ability to speak our minds and ask questions is so important.
I'm just gonna pretend I didn't invite you. Just fucking speak. Asshole.
I was just gonna say though, I get a lot of these like fake sponsorship emails, and they all have like it's so obviously fake. Like there's no like picture for the email, right? All of the ats are like at this like one suspicious like social media site in South Korea.com. I had to like look up this site to be like, what is that? And they're all worded basically the same, and I'm like, buddy, you can't do the same spam, like you can't do the same scam email, because like now I just know this is you with another account doing the same thing. It'll be like, hi, it's Jeremiah or Jebediah or Ashley from
the entire Kerbal from
insert
Kerbal Space
fake
Program?
country, fake company. Da 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 da. It's all the exact same wording after the name. Like they just swap the name and the company and the product, but like nothing else changes. It's all the exact same, and it's like,
it's actually kind of
Does this
clever to
work?
use a biblical name, though. Like, there's a lot of Christians in Korea, and I guess maybe there could be an assumption over there that more of us in America and abroad have biblical names.
It's
So
like,
it's
oh,
just
I'm not
like,
sure
yeah,
about
I meet
the
a
legitimacy of this
Jebediah, a
email.
Jeremiah, and a Joseph of Arimathea every few days.
I just
I'm not sure if I'd believe it. I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. I wasn't sure at first, but now it's a Christian name from South Korea. I think this is legit.
because naturally the person that's made a giant essay about the issues of Christianity is the person to target with that.
Absolutely.
You.
This person clearly loves everything to do with Christianity. No problems here. Let me be the first to say, as a Catholic, we got fucking problems.
Never say as a
Nice.
Catholic. That's never good.
Yeah, well,
I know.
I didn't choose
I think
it.
that was a good sentence. That was perfectly
Yeah,
acceptable
that was
use
a
of
good
as a
sentence,
Catholic.
but, like,
Because
As a
like,
Catholic.
the only way you change systemic privilege and things is you first need to be able to actually acknowledge that it exists. And
You gotta recognize when things aren't going so great. But let's just say that I was never very popular at Bible study. The ability to say, but maybe that line sucks, doesn't go over that well. You get a lot of people go, well, what if it actually means this? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it actually means what it said.
but what if we like invented a thing where it
The curtains are
means a good
fucking blue, Jeremy.
I mean, most fables are supposed to be interpreted from a non-literal frame. But
there are some
is
parts that
definitely
aren't the fables.
sentences that are
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
non-literal, and were written by political figures at certain points in history. We know they've changed the text to do that.
The best part of the Bible is the Psalm of Solomon, the erotic poem that was co-opted into becoming a part of the Bible because a bunch of Christians who were very horny said, you know what? This could totally be a metaphor for loving God and Jesus very much and not just about sex.
Very
Fellas,
much.
is it Christian to have gay loving sex with Jesus?
Yes. Yes, it
It's
is.
the most Christian thing you can do.
No Christian, bro.
Oh, man.
This episode's a fucking disaster. I'm gonna be the first.
Feel free to
say.
cut something
Alex,
and get
Alex,
us to
why
the
the fuck are you
point.
here,
Alex,
man?
Why
What's
am I
going on?
here?
Come on,
It's
talk about
because I
Kate
make
Russell.
videos about video games and philosophy and the intersection between
What?
video games and philosophy. Can you not hear me?
Now we can hear you,
You're
Doug.
fine.
Face.
You're just being
You know
a dick. Yo, I said this
Okay,
episode
so-
would have a weird vibe at the beginning. I didn't quite.
Okay, so I got an actual argument for this that I've made in
Yeah.
other videos, and I'm gonna lay it out flat for you because I believe the Video Gems audience is
lay it
intelligent
out flat
enough
for me.
to understand my words without being qualified by anything. Video games are the perfect meaning for the communication of philosophical ideas because it is communication through experience rather than rhetoric. Or I could say experience as rhetoric, because it is far more convincing to experience a thought yourself than to be told a thought by another and assume that it is someone else's and thus doesn't have to be a part of you. There's a concept in Buddhist rationalism called an upaya, which is an expedient means where you essentially create a system by which you cause a person to have the idea themselves rather than attempt to convince them of the idea. So the point is you would
Inception.
let the yeah, kinda.
No, I mean
But
in the
it's-
traditional sense, not as
Yeah.
like
No,
the film
because,
was
you know,
taking the idea
Not-
of, but
yeah.
like the idea of getting someone to come to the idea themselves, by planting the seed that
Yeah.
leads to it, sort of thing.
So like
Getting
the
a lot of
kind
Lost
of
Baby
thing
vibes.
that is like a kind of a well-known upaya is the practice of koan, a poem that is a puzzle that has no answer. So the ones that you've probably heard are, what is the sound of one hand clapping? What is the if a tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound? And people stop doing that,
I was
Aaron.
going to do
That's
that.
the right.
Aaron, but I
That's
decided
the
not to do it
cheeky
out of
answer.
respect for our esteemed guest on the Video Gems podcast.
I to be clear, I think it's a really valuable concept to explore, and just coming from my angle, because I think that perfectly nails what the value of ludic exploration of ideas is, because it is experiential and it is action versus let's say passive
Mhm.
media forms. They both have their benefits, though, that the
Right.
other kind of misses out on, because
It is a
allows
kind
you
of
a place. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
It allows a kind of dialectic that doesn't require dialogue. So
Mm-hmm.
and I've outlined this a little bit more in length in my book, Control the Revolution: Why Video Games Are the Future of Philosophy, where essentially
This motherfucker. This motherfucker.
why are you so salt?
This motherfucker.
Darkfire
on
woke
my
up and chose
podcast.
violence today. Invites guest, gets angry.
Just fucking takes the piss out of them.
This motherfucker comes on my podcast, starts spouting all these complicated words, and then casually drops that he wrote a book.
Good.
He wrote 2 books.
I wrote
Yeah,
two
what
books.
was one though?
I'm working
Which is
on a
fucking
third.
dope. That's
Um,
awesome.
But oh, I lost my
Third
place.
book.
what have you done,
in,
Darkrai?
in your book, something
Dialectic.
Revolution.
Yes.
Yeah, but dialect
Um,
with games.
Right. So the way I conceive of it is that the way I try to explain it is, so first, defining philosophy. That's a thing everyone hates to do because it's a very dumb thing to try to define philosophy. But the best definition I ever received was from a professor that I had when I was studying abroad in Japan, Terry Robaum, who did things that I was very interested in. Basically, he did cross-cultural studies of the interaction between Buddhism and Christianity in Japan.
He's just the coolest dude ever, isn't it?
He was. And he had this very interesting speaking pattern. He would always stop every now and again to go, just to like give you a second to take in what he said and then before he moved on. And but
Okay.
he said philosophy is wisdom through the loving dialogue between friends. And that was the best definition of philosophy I ever heard because it combines both the etymology of the word with the praxis of the history of philosophy itself. Because nowadays, when you ask college students,
that image of Plato and Socrates talking.
yeah, holding up the finger, spinning a basketball.
Yeah.
I have the trans brain rot of any time I see that image, all I see is the edited version of it where on one side is a toddler putting blocks in a cube and it's discussing gender with cis people, and then the other side is those two walking with discussing gender with trans people. Which is a meme that has gone around the internet a billion times.
I mean, not wrong though. Like, okay, I'm tangenting off of the thing I said, but I am a cishet dude. I grew up Catholic Midwest, and I had a lot of learning to do. I came from a very ignorant place to where I am now, basically being shepherded by the patience and the friendship of some very cool people that I met throughout high school and college. And one thing that I have observed about queer communities is there is this lingual superpower to be able to just remember and account for every kind of individual person, to just to make space for whatever the thing they don't know about when it shows up to the community and says, all right, I can get with your lingo, I can get with your language, and I can show you respect and get you in this community, even from a point of not having like knowledge of like that particular aspect of queerness. Like, language is a superpower amongst queer communities that I think cishet communities don't understand, because there's just
I mean,
yeah.
I think this is an aspect that many marginalized communities experience, and it has to do with the social structure of community and the reality of like varying levels of engagement with that social concept. I've had a lot of conversations with my friend like Bellamy about this in the context of who is both queer and Black, and talking about it from that perspective of like certain aspects of Black culture in the U.S. and certain cities and things, and like how that works. And I think language at baseline, it's the power of it is not respected enough in like just how much of an impact it has on our conception of the world and of ourselves and what we're able to conceptualize. I've talked at length about like soft linguistic relativity. I don't believe in hard linguistic relativity. I think it's a little absurd, but I think it's sort of a thing of if you can't communicate a thought externally, if you can't process a thought because you lack the language or the knowledge to process it, you might have that thought, but it's just going to sit there unusable until someone gives you that tool, as it were. And I think language is always a tool at baseline. And so what you get is these situations where someone's had this feeling or this knowledge for a long time, but they've had no way of expressing it or connecting it with other people.
To piggyback on that, I'll talk about this as a Greek speaker, right?
Mm.
Because I've had to explain to my sort of not as online Greek friends the concept of a gender neutral pronoun. So it's just not a thing in Greek, right? And so, and when I did that, it sort of hit me that I am, I was like, wait a minute, I am in my university's LGBTQ like club.
Mm.
And I've never met a Greek person that identifies as non-binary.
Hmm.
Because like,
Onesies-
how would you
Maybe
even do
because
that?
how do you? Yeah.
Well,
how would
so
you
I
even
can
do
actually
that
in
speak to this
Greek?
as well,
Yeah.
because I grew up going through French immersion,
Yeah.
which and then I can
And
I can really
apparent-
say that
apparent-
like the binarization of gender within French really informed, I think, a lot of the experiences that I had with the Catholic school system I attended, because it informed so much of how they thought about the world, and it creates a sort of rigid set. And the reality is that you have to invent new language.
Yeah.
And it's not that the concept can't exist in the mind, it's that they just can't express it yet. And so, in the last couple of years in France, we've seen an interesting shift linguistically, and not just in a social like aspect of French, queer people who are forming terms for themselves, gender neutral
Yeah, I've
pronouns
heard
and things,
about this.
but formal recognition of that. The Several of the major French dictionaries, which if you don't know anything about French dictionaries and things, they're very strict. French is one of the most heavily, I would say, formally controlled languages on the planet right now.
Yeah, the French
Which
they
is-
don't
tries
like
to
slang,
maintain
do they?
things,
Which is
Um,
bonkers.
which
As
is
if
just
French
not how
has
language
rules.
works.
Yeah.
French has very strict rules. It
Don't
just
they like doesn't like the government try and come up with their own words for like say like technology and stuff like that, and like new things that have come out when like
I've-
the words for that already exist. Am I right in saying that?
I'm not sure, but like, so and again, French diaspora has a lot more like slang words and things. A lot of people in Canada who go through French immersion, or in Quebec, go through English immersion. We speak this sort of weird pidgin, generally referred to as franglais, which is this awful bastardization of both languages simultaneously in the most beautiful, chaotic manner, because it is incomprehensible unless you have like this specific set of understanding of both languages. And I remember being like at Canada Games and hanging out with Quebec athletes, and like all of us doing the same thing, which is this like, it's mixing of the grammar structures of both languages, and it's mixing the words. So you're sort of switching halfway through sentences, and there's a rhythm to it. And it's hard to explain, and I feel like it's probably needs to be more heavily studied. But I think it is a direct result of the similar teaching processes that occur in both areas of how immersion language teaching occurs. Which is
I guess I want
I don't
to.
speak French well, but I speak it.
I guess I want to change my earlier sentence then, with these new insights, and kind of just say maybe one's command of a language is influenced just from being on cultural margins, because I mean, born out of necessity, to communicate ideas between people who typically wouldn't communicate, or between like just concepts that are notions without words to them or feelings. You either make language or you make art to communicate a feeling without words. And so I guess it's not too dissimilar inventing slang and inventing language than it is to creating any kind of art like our frickin' YouTube videos. It reminds me of this anecdote that I found, that like in any cultural group, the people that are the most most aggressive with lingual innovation are tween young teenage girls. Young teenage women are more like experimental with language, and I think that probably would stem from just general patriarchy across the world, creating conditions in which women need to have young women need to have like their own communities to communicate and understand feelings that they're not able to communicate externally to each other within their more insular groups. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that.
I think it's 100% what it is, and I think like language evolves naturally in things, and I think it's also worth noting how much like what we define as a language versus like a dialect or like a
Or a
subset
Creole.
is incredibly politicized. So I would argue that AAE, most people refer to it as AAVE, should probably be considered its own language. It has its own valid grammar structures, unique language, like linguistic tools. Yes, there's a lot of overlap with English, and it also tends to influence English. But that's like saying, Catalonian and Spanish are not separate languages because they're
Right.
super interrelated. It's like the difference is that to acknowledge the sort of marginalized languages, and we see this all over the world. These sort of politicization of what is or isn't.
Debate. It's a big debate with Cypriot and Greek too.
Yeah. Where like the debate's still out generally among linguists. There's quite a few who've I would say over the last like 2 decades there's been a bigger shift towards viewing AAE as its own unique language that should be validated. But to do that pushes against a lot of people's understanding of it as how it's presented by American hegemony, which is that it's like a lower form of language by their standards, or it's less intelligent, which is bullshit. Like it's bullshit, but it is how it's
interesting.
presented.
It is. And what's interesting, hi, podcast listeners. By the way, I'm black. I'm also white. Deal with it.
I'm black.
So, dad jokes.
Wait.
So, and I grew up in suburban Nebraska. I was not, my family is bougie. I was not speaking AAV when I was growing up. But, I eventually came to communities in which it was significantly more common. The ability to code switch your language, I think, may lay credence to this idea that it's 2 different languages. One's ability to know the Nebraskan unaccented English versus the entering into black cultural spaces and speaking more black is something that I've had to struggle with, because I've often chose not to code switch just because I'm in different groups, and I've sort of come to a middle position with that. And so it's interesting, I think, for me to see AAV as its own language. I would also need to bring that with a caveat that language itself needs to not be seen as a category with like boxes. Like you can't have a strict taxonomy. It needs to be this messy, fluid series of Venn diagrams.
I think the best way to describe them would be like fluid spheres that overlap. And
because like you can't talk about what is AAVE without also talking about what is white American Southern, because at some point they weren't different. They were just how people spoke until there was more segregation over time. I mean, more the same.
Yeah.
Over time.
And you can't for example, you can't really discuss English linguistically without discussing both Romance and Germanic languages. So English was a Germanic language, is kind of still a Germanic language, is usually classified under that, but its vocabulary, I think that the general breakdown is something like 36% French, 26% Latin.
It's so much hodgepodge of all of the languages that were around it.
So it's kept all the structure of the like the way we use verbs, the grammar structure, there's a bunch of other factors that the English maintained from being a Germanic language. But if you read Old English. And I'm not talking about Middle English, because sometimes people, when they hear Old English, they think Chaucer, and Chaucer is Middle English, which is like post a lot of the shift. I'm talking like Old English. We're talking like there's only a couple of texts that have survived. It's extremely rare to find them.
Is Beowulf Old
1066.
English?
I believe it is. Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, it is like proper Old English or Early English, however you want to classify it. But basically, what you see, and this is what I mean by like language is always political and always historical, is the reason English is the way it is. It's because of the Normandy invasion and functionally the colonization of Britain. Not colonization in the way that we think about it in a modern context, but at the time. And so what you have is a nobility class that speaks almost exclusively French, Proto-French. It's not the same thing as French now. There is a lot of language shift that occurs over 1,000 years,
French.
but functionally French. And this is also why you see like well into the 1500s, 1600s things that the nobility is still speaking mostly French. French was the political language in the way that English is now, which tells you about hegemony and tells you about who has power on a global scale.
Lingua franca, the term for the main language, is still language of the Franks.
Yep. Literally, you can see these histories in what words we have and where they came from and how they start. So it's a really fascinating history. But then you see English do the same thing all over the world, and so, like I know for my familial history, a lot of my family's from Ireland, and I actually am like just directly descended from like Ireland's like last. No, not directly descended. I'm directly descended from like the brother or cousin of the last king of Ireland, which is
wow,
weird. It's like the family tree thing. You track it all the way back, and then
I also have
time we
Irish heritage, but it's not a nice story.
Oh no! By the time you get to like the last 200, 300 years, it's just purely oppression. Like there's so much intergenerational trauma. And like the reason why my family ended up in Canada is basically purely because of the famines and various other things that resulted in extreme poverty and no other opportunities.
Ladies
me
and gentlemen
take this.
and other beings, what you've just witnessed is a live demonstration of why video essays are 3 hours long.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's true.
But,
can I take
to
this
finish the thought.
conversation? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, take the in a second. But just to finish the thought, Gaeilge, like the language of Ireland, has been heavily oppressed for an extremely long time. We've actually lost some of the languages of the same family, of the Celtic family of languages, because of like Manx is basically dead. I believe. I think there's two people that still. It was dead. And then there's two functionally native speakers now, but like who knows how long it'll last. It's at least been somewhat preserved. One of my linguistics professors was specialized in basically recording and preserving as much as possible of dying languages. He primarily worked in, I can't remember where he was originally from, but I believe he was half Canadian, half Colombian, and he mostly worked in the Amazon and various indigenous communities around there where languages were dying out. And super fascinating work. But yeah, so I find linguistic death both incredibly depressing and incredibly fascinating to discuss, because it tells you something that so much of power systems are built on oppressing language and trying to beat out, let's call those marginal languages. Anyway, I'll hand it off now. Sorry.
No. The problem is I'm also just as fascinated with this, but I feel like I don't know nearly as much as you do. In fact, I know I don't know nearly as much as you do about the history of languages.
In the same way that I know I don't know nearly as much as you do about philosophy.
It's okay. You don't need to know shit about philosophy. You can just do it. But I want to take this conversation of language and I guess shift it back to the idea of using video games as philosophy, because the way I portray it is with this understanding of voices, because philosophy is inherently dialogue and not just the holding of a belief or the writing of an argument. The point of philosophy is not to have an idea and have it be preserved or win, but to evolve, to grow yourself through having constant dialogue with other people and other ideas. Philosophy is a way of life and a praxis more than before it is a history and a set curriculum of influential ideas. It's also that you can't dismiss the academic part of it, but without understanding the praxis, you're going to approach the formal study of it with a huge stick up your ass about what's important and how your ideas are going to fix the world or some shit like that. But with
I think it was Abigail Thorne that described it as there's a certain large chunk of philosophy that's just white guys jerking each other off.
Trying to like track the history of German idealism to existentialism to postmodernism is just like, why are we bothering with any of it? Because like it's interesting in its own sake when you get into the details, but like the broad strokes, you can get the most of the value from each of those different traditions, which is why you see philosophy curriculum skipping hundreds of years and dozens of thinkers, because oftentimes the minutia may be more interesting for a person deeply invested in philosophy, but ultimately not that important for the praxis of philosophy if a person's getting into it and trying to have it inform how they live their life. And so with video games, I'm going to keep turning it back. So we have this struggle with like, our ability to communicate with language. And when languages get so insular, get so jargony the way philosophy does, like then it becomes a struggle. How do you communicate an idea without catching them up on hundreds of years of more insular, more jargon specificity with how a term is used? And when you then say, well, I can craft an experience, I can use the very act of play, which is itself an act of learning, to create that dialogue through that dialectic, through action, we get this interesting dynamic where games become vehicles for ideas. And it's possible to communicate ideas through games that aren't video games, of course. There are, we can go to board games like the Landlord's game, the pre-Monopoly, where it's like, hey guys, maybe rent and capitalism bad. And that turned into, hey guys, want to win capitalism? Here you go.
It's 500 different flavors.
But then with a
capitalism
video
board game.
Yeah, but with a video game, what we have is
capitalism.
Nice.
What makes a video game a game different, I guess specifically what makes a video game different is that the rules become less fluid because they are programmed. With board games, with sport, with play, when you are doing it as a child, as an adult, in a social group, out in public, the magic circle, the agreement to become a part of the imaginary space of play is very fluid, and the rules and the goals of a game can change with the wind. They can change moment to moment based on how people want to play. With a game, those things get slightly more set in stone, not 100%, but we have 3 different actors essentially lending their voice with how they have crafted this artistic object. There's the developers who had an intention with what they wanted to communicate when creating the game. There is the game itself, which exists as it is regardless of the creator's intentions. And then there are the players who, through their actions, through their ability to try to manipulate or push the limits of what the game offers, can then use the game and its current state to come to their own conclusion, to lend their voice to what the game is through their play.
Yeah, I think that's where competitive games shine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the result is that we essentially can look at a video game, an art object, as a dialogue through actions. And through that, it can become dialectic because the player has their ideas of what their play means. And that can be recontextualized by the game itself. And it allows the ideas to be interacted with through the language of actions themselves rather than through actual formal language. And what is beautiful about that is that it sort of takes away any of the, well, what I actually meant was, or what they actually meant was, because what was actually meant can't be fully solidified. Like, it can become pretty obvious sometimes, especially if there's language used to like give defining
saying
parts.
Ayn Rand is bad.
Yeah.
Yellow paint
Yeah.
on the ladder.
But then,
Paint on
like,
the ladder.
you could, but then the player, like, Bioshock says Ayn Rand is bad. The player could try to play Bioshock without once fighting or killing a big daddy. And then suddenly this attempt to go against what the eventual trick of the game tries to teach you about objectivism, by not being an objectivist in every possible manner, becomes extremely hard. And you're like, oh no, I have to give myself over to what this game is doing. I have to choose to be tricked in order to make it through. And so it's like, that sucks. I can't achieve my goals the way I want to in this system. And that is possible with any game. I go back and forth on whether or not every game is in some way this dialectical formulation of video games and play. Sometimes I want to say yes. Other times I feel like it's not that deep. But I can't settle that in my mind. I always go back and forth.
I think it is. That just doesn't mean the dialogue is necessarily that deep. You know, like, you can have a shallow dialogue, you can have a deep dialogue. I think I'm gonna grab 3 examples of like how explicit this become as a dialectic between designer, game, and player.
One of them
first
is pathologic.
is you knew where I was going with the third one.
What's the second
You
one,
knew.
Darkrai?
Okay, the first one is, weirdly enough, the Matrix game where the Wachowskis appear near the end diegetically to have a conversation with the player. And like this, they're not the first, I think, to do this, but they're one of the earliest instances that I know of. And I can't remember an earlier one. But this idea gets expanded in later works like Hotline Miami. Hotline Miami, if you do certain things, you end up talking to the developers of the game at the end of the game. Where they have a direct conversation with you about, like, a conversation with you through their language, but also through, like, all of the experience you've just had. And then the third that I wanted to do is, I think Pathologic is the most interesting one of these, because Pathologic manages to communicate a lot, even when it was poorly translated. And this isn't a thing that people don't think about enough, is like how much a translation can affect the meaning of a work of art is pretty heavy. This is something that I'd recommend looking into. If I can't remember the exact stuff, but Neil Gaiman's talked about his work with Miyazaki on Princess Mononoke and translating that for the dub and sub. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there about like trying to stick to the goals of Miyazaki and the goals of the work of art and maintain that as much as possible. Maybe not always in a literal translation, but rather in a translation of meaning as best as possible. And Pathologic is interesting because it has 2 separate translations. The first Pathologic, it has one that is generally considered very poor. But for a lot of people who played that and have the ability to recognize what the game was doing, with ludonarrative, with conveyance through play, still grasp a great many of these things. And I think that perfectly sort of shows what Soccer Tetris is talking about conveyance through action can be sometimes stronger than conveyance through pure literal words. Is that recent game? I haven't played it yet, but I've seen some stuff about it. It looks really interesting, where you act as a translator, and there isn't really true like language in our structure at all. What is it? Something of Senna?
Chant of something.
Chance of
Soul.
I also am interested in that one.
I've played a bit of that game.
Chance of Sadar.
It's good.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But the point is that game is very explicitly doing that. It's almost exclusively communicating through play and action, because there is no direct dialogue. There we go. It was. I was close. I was a little bit off. One letter off. Yeah, and I think if there's anything, there's something uniquely valuable about ludological storytelling and the engagement with magic circles. And I think video games are kind of interesting, as you say, because they're one of the few magic circles that is static enough that the only differences between two people's experiences of it will be the player. Really.
No house rules in video games.
Well, not even there is house rules, but
you could invent a new tech that results in a house rule.
Yeah. There is a lot of house rules.
There's a quote I like. I don't remember who exactly said it, but it was like, sports have rules, video games have laws.
That's the
an
Ian
interesting
Dansking video on Melee as a spectator sport.
Wow. I mean, if we want to comment on the idea of house rules, we can
on YouTube.
Let's just look at our good friend, the Souls-like community, and say,
we have to...
should you play with Mimic Tier or not? Are you allowed to use magic or not? That rather than having any comment on the value of having those conversations, I think it's clear that culturally speaking, the meaning that people find in those games often comes to a point of how did that person play it? And I think there is some undercurrent in the person trying to preserve their own experience of the dialogue with those games by enforcing it on others.
Which is a fascinating process.
Let's look at our good friend, the Souls-like community. Has to be one of the best sentences ever spoken. This is why I freaking love you, man. You'll just say things like that.
Like, thinking about
we have been recording for almost an hour, and we have not talked about Alex's videos yet.
I mean,
let's talk about your videos, Alex.
The nature of the videos more than anything.
Yeah. So I guess we've talked about my point, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so we can talk about my videos. Hi, my name is Soccer Tetris, and I'm a Warframe content creator.
Hey.
And I'm so happy that is the box I'm now in. So I made a 9-hour video.
9-hour video about Warframe, and this is what
made a 9-hour video about the philosophical and cultural inspirations in the game Warframe, which took off. I can't say that I didn't kind of plan for it to take off. I did some I used foreknowledge and some research into how to get YouTube to make a thing viral, and I tried to be as lucky as possible, and turns out I got that luck one time. And I think it was so strange for people in the Warframe space, because I think that community wasn't used to a person taking Warframe's narrative seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's this general consensus that the way Warframe has told its story makes it a bad story, and so it isn't worth exploring on a deep level. And there are of course fair criticisms of how Warframe has rolled out and changed, and like tried to fix its story post hoc when they didn't really know what to do with something. Like games as service is gonna be like that. It's a ever
I
evolving
would say
thing.
Warframe's kind of unique in how it does it though, because it's like I remember I played the game first maybe a decade and a bit ago, and it was just like I came back way later and it was not the same game at all in like a billion different ways, but especially like narrative structure wise and delivery, it was just like a totally different thing. Whereas like Destiny 2, which I have an unhealthy relationship with, despite its many changes, I wouldn't say that its narrative has drastically changed too much.
There's a big moon in the sky, isn't there? That's it. That's all you need to know.
Well, no, I mean the detail,
It's
but
not?
like there hasn't been as many retconning, I would say, as like Warframe I think has done.
Didn't the
direct
robot die?
retcons, right?
Oh, the thing is about Warframe is that they like leaving just enough unexplained all the time that even if something is a narrative change in direction, I don't personally consider it a retcon, because what would have been the answer in the past becomes no longer the answer right now. And I think they are happy to live in that vague space of we don't know the answer, we'll figure it out later. But somehow, in my opinion, I think they keep coming to new answers and then giving new questions to future plot lines that is not bad, as opposed to you could do it like Lost and do it the exact same thing but make it very bad.
I was not saying it was bad, to be clear. We're just saying it was an interesting experience of almost discombobulation coming back to it way later and being like, what the fuck is going on?
No, but see, like that's also kind of been the story of Warframe's entire life. So the impetus of Warframe existing is simply because Digital Extremes made a game called Dark Sector, and they wanted to go with this very particular concept that they had shown off at a conference that got them a publisher, and then the publisher said change it, turn it into a World War II Russian shooter game, go. And so Dark Sector was going to be Warframe as a third-person shooter, like linear narrative game that then had to change drastically because of publisher influence. And Warframe, Digital Extremes basically, after that experience and after Dark Sector wasn't a success, they said, you know, we're going to take a chance, we're going to risk it all on creating this game as service, and we're going to bring back the original concept for Dark Sector, and we're going to do it our way. And they got lucky. And it did not feel that good at the beginning. I wasn't there from the very start. I was there a couple years after the start. But over time, they embraced this sort of, we're going to just go with what's good and try to fix it as best we can, mentality. Like when players started finding, bugs, finding ways to exploit the system, they took those and made them part of the system.
Which
and
is
that was
brilliant
like
design.
Yeah, like the biggest example is the bullet jump, which is the core of all of Warframe's movement, and movement is the thing that people focus on for Warframe. Players found a glitch where if they crouched, slid, and jumped at the same time, they would propel themselves forward because of the physics system of the game. And they said, rather than try to fix that glitch, let's just make it a core part of our movement loop.
You should always embrace things like that as a developer.
And it was that attitude.
Warframe has
But it's that
dashing.
same attitude that they had about the
game sounds
narrative
amazing.
as well. And I think this is what people often forget. Their attitude towards their narrative is, we want to, it was not all planned out at the start. It couldn't have been. The game's been going for too long. They are taking what they have than their writers are over time crafting the story that they want it to tell. And they don't consider the quests to be like the only part of the narrative that matters, which is why in my video I take this specific tactic of saying, all right, so the system chart, the going around the map and doing all these missions and unlocking the solar system, that is not just stuff you can do. I decided that's going to be a timeline, because your missions, your story missions, are unlocked by going through the chart.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you pass the chart, but there's still missions to do. And where do you put new updates into the overarching story? Because sometimes an update happens, but the story they're telling now isn't in the furthest part of the chronology of the story overall. They jump around their own timeline. And like, so it is a wild, interesting way to tell a non-linear story, because their point is, we have a story we want to tell. We will find a way to make it work within the themes we're trying to communicate with Warframe somewhere. And they're not precious about their own canonicity. And because of that, they're able to tell more interesting stories than someone who would go, I can't tell this story because I did this over there. Their tactic is
telling me
more...
that this is Kingdom Hearts?
It's a thing of values. Do you value themes and meaning and artistic statement, or do you value a canonicity? And you are completely correct, Darkrai. Kingdom Hearts does not give a shit about canonicity. Kingdom Hearts is there to say its themes. Its themes are simple, but boy does it say it a lot in a lot of complicated ways.
They say the themes a lot, and I have another video up right now explaining the ontology of Kingdom Hearts really fast, because it is about themes, and its plot doesn't make any sense, but its themes are extremely consistent in a way that is infuriating.
It's emotionally and thematically coherent. And
No,
I
the
think
thing
that's
that-
the value.
So the thing that both Kingdom Hearts and Danganronpa do this, and it's something that's
If you have a
fascinating to me
large
because-
cowlick, you're a protagonist. Danganronpa.
No, I mean that's true,
That's
but
a
like
good description
so
of Danganronpa.
so Kingdom Hearts has light and darkness. Danganronpa has hope and despair. And both of these pairs are treated as like actual forces in the narrative. Right? Like light and darkness in Kingdom Hearts are very real, tangible things.
I would argue that Kingdom Hearts, it doesn't have light and darkness. Kingdom Heart has love and heart and nihilism. Like,
Yeah, sure, but like
thematically speaking.
at
It also has time and individuation and personality,
Yes.
like
and
and
what
memory.
does it mean to be a self? And there's
and
a lot of memory
memes.
stuff and memes.
A lot of polar opposites like Craig and fuck.
Well, yeah, of course. I'm bringing it full circle, Harry.
Oh no, it's not even going to be at the start of the episode.
That's great.
Oh, you bet it is.
It's just going to be like, why the fuck is he saying Craig? What's going on?
That was
I feel like-
that was
I feel
such
like
a
you should
good
just-
soundbite too.
You should have Harry say that, and then you should edit in that segment right there.
Yeah. Just for context, so the viewers can
Nah.
laugh along with us.
So, like, the way that it makes these themes not only consistent, but like makes them represent sort of like these very real, tangible, ontological forces in the narrative, like light and darkness and hope and despair in Danganronpa's case, it's just really cool.
Yeah, and
That
I
was
guess
such an
it's-
emotionally vulnerable way to say that, Darkfry.
It's really cool.
That was great. That was like
think there's-
100% honest.
And I think
Yeah.
there's I think it's a problem and I talked about this in videos before, where actually no, I haven't talked about this in videos yet. It's in my Undertale script,
Soon.
where people want to approach art as these like little logical puzzle boxes to be solved, and I think that's why those same types of people shit so hard on art that is all about the heart and does not give a shit about the logic. They're like, and the problem is that because they can't engage with the art on its terms, because they're obsessed with engaging with all art as if it's the same thing, and it's like, I'm sorry,
Taking
but if you
only
try
a
to,
literal reading.
it's like trying to treat sliding doors like they're a pull door. You're gonna have a bad time, and the problem isn't the door. Like if you're yanking the slide door like this,
I open
and
every
going, "Why is it
sliding door
open?"
by pulling.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm very
it's-
strong.
It's so
You've
funny
probably
to
got
me
that
because I'm just like,
microphone for an
it's like
hour.
it's like
You must be.
when you have the perspective to be able to engage with both of these types of arts and things.
Just
Watching people
reminded
do
me of
that,
the I
it's just kind
think
of
you should
watching
leave
someone be like,
sketch.
I know this thing said that I should like emotionally engage with it, but I won't. Plot holes are the greatest problem in the universe, and it's
Yeah.
like,
One of my favorite, who was it? Did Folding Ideas do that video about the movie Annihilation?
Yeah.
Because I had to read Annihilation in order to do my evaluation of Warframe's Angels of the Zeramin quest. Because guess what was inspired by what? Warframe very much took from that, from Annihilation to do that one specific quest. And like that's the kind of thing Warframe is able to do with being so thematically focused. Just entirely shift its tone whenever it needs to in order to tell its story.
I think there's interesting things with that when you have really sprawling works like that. Destiny 2 has a similar thing with that where it'll have seasons, and I would say that like there is a thematic through line throughout all of Destiny. I'm not going to say what it is because I want to do a video on it at some point. I don't want to reveal.
You might
what I
have to
think so.
get
the
me
big
up
name.
to date because so many people tell me do Destiny next, and I'm like, I'm in my 30s.
No, don't.
I'm
do
gonna
Destiny.
die at some point.
There's
Can
a
you
lot.
even play, like, any of the
in the
original
way
stuff?
that I can't. There's a lot of missing stuff for sure. It's a problem.
Ah.
But you can watch all the cutscenes at least as films. But the point, my point is, because I really like the writing of Destiny 2. I have issues with the content management, let's call it. But like, I like the writing for the most part. There's issues, but I like it for the most part. But Destiny 2 can go from Jodorowsky's Dune style space pirate season to, we're doing dark witchcraft in like a crypt, and it can go to these very, very disparate places, but there's a thematic coherence and through line through all of them. Because I would say Destiny 2 is a sound like a weird statement, but it's a game about collapsing binaries, and constantly revealing them to be constructed ideas, which, considering there are multiple queer writers on the
Hell
staff,
yeah.
doesn't surprise me.
Hey, that works.
I know for a fact that a lot of the writing staff have seen my video on Queer Rep in Destiny 2,
That's
so
cool.
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
pretty comfortable in my quality of analyzing that game because the people who write it said I did good. So,
I'm pretty sure people at Digital Extremes have seen my video, but I think they're often a lot more careful about making statements.
Yeah.
Do you think that
And
was
I
like
have
a work
no-
day event for them? Do you think they all like got into a room with a projector and it was like, all right, everybody, today we're gonna
That would
watch
be
the
9
work.
work
hours
day
of soccer
video
I-
tattoo.
for the next
I
7
would
hours.
love at some point if they were all in a room and they were just
Yeah.
watching it, and at some point two people stood up and yelled at the screen at the same time, one of them cheering, yeah, Change of Hero is about autism, and one of them yelling, no, that's not what I meant at all. I would love if that
like that.
happened.
That
That's
means
my
they-
dream.
Even they can decide.
But I mean, I would say that through line for Warframe is the notion of family, specifically the notion of found family, because the way Warframe handles biology is basically just they started from everything's fucked, and that isn't a basis that can work in this universe anymore. So do you still have the concept of family? And the answer is yes. It's always yes. But how do you sustain your concept of family when you don't have this easy cheat answer that's too simple to rely on? And the answer is all the other kinds of family that are still valid. And they were valid before, and now it's what you need to rely on when everything changes and continues to change. And there is no biological mandate to the thing that really matters is that central through line for all of Warframe, in my opinion. So anyway, I've come to hate my Warframe video. It's mainly just because of there being a lot of expectation. It's the main thing that gets engaged with on my channel still. I have attempted to capitalize on that one video by going in, covering more recent updates, going back and looking at things that got left out that I didn't put in the original video because I couldn't fit it in the commentary style that I took. And it's such a strange style of video that I couldn't do again because the format that I chose to just show everything while using my video essay to comment on it as it played. I chose that because basically when I tried to talk to people in our Discord about Warframe, I kind of found that most people didn't have any basis or engagement with it. I was like the main Warframe buff in our group. And so I was just like, I can't talk about this to people who don't play Warframe. I need to do something else. I need to show all of it. And I happened to be listening to the History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps podcast, and there was a podcast they had talking about commentaries as a format of philosophy, where a person would write their book, their commentary on a book, right next to the handwritten translation manuscript that was being used, that was being copied over and preserved. And I was like, you would have a book and it would be both the book and the thing after it in one setting. And it's like, that's what my Warframe video needs to be. It needs to be a commentary.
I am actually kind of doing something with that sort of structure, with the Undertale video, where I've been slowly casting. And eventually I will already record all their lines. And yeah, it will be a fully sort of treating a playthrough as almost like a theater performance where everybody's playing their characters. And,
that's amazing.
Like Codex Entry did with Pathologic.
Bingo, yeah, because Ruby and I are actually really good friends. And I was slightly inspired by that. And then I spent a lot of time discussing the script with Ruby as I started working on it. So, I'm probably gonna give her a full writing credit on it. I think it's the only video that I'll have where it's not just like people helped, and I think I either credit them as writing feedback or assistant stuff, but I think I'm just gonna straight up call it written.
Yeah. You can have two names on the same line for the written by section.
Yeah, no, but
no one can stop
I think
you.
that the differentiation, I think, matters because I really value crediting people for the work they do, and I think it's important to credit exactly what they did and how they did it because I never want someone to not be recognized for how much they did. So
I remember reading the script for Queer Relativity on the train, and I edited one line and then left the document. I edited one line and then I saw it in the video. I was like, yes, amazing.
Yeah, no, genuinely, if someone literally just gave like read the thing and said like 3 sentences that I found were valuable feedback, they're getting a credit, because I think there's a harmful impulse amongst certain types of people to want to place themselves as the auteur, you know.
Yeah, I like to.
And
cut out my tongue.
I reject auteurism, and a lot of my art, whether people realize it or not, is as a deconstruction of auteurism. I cannot stand it as a concept, because I think it understands nothing of both how fundamentally sociological all art is. It's always informed by the people we spend time with and the things we interact with and the society we exist in, but also just how collaborative art is.
Yeah, in the video essay space in particular, I think there are very few people that are like insular, that are just like sort of in their own box doing their own thing. I could probably name like 2 people who are doing that. I think everybody
that
else.
was the norm at one point.
Yeah.
I think I want to say 3 to 4 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago actually, around when I started, and I feel pretty comfortable in saying that I've been one of the people, not the only one obviously, that's really pushed that shift, because I just know a lot of like much larger video essayists who've directly said that like my influence is why they've gotten more comfortable with working more directly with other people. But like 3 to 4 years ago is where that shift starts to begin, and I think the primary people that have pushed it was myself, FD Signifier, and like a few others. Jesse, obviously, Lady Night the Brave, I think a few other people.
I think Patchwolf did it a bunch recently too.
Patchwolf started doing it more recently, and I would say was more influenced by Feek and like their friends. So like
it seems to me like, because I also have noticed the shift. I think it's some people have wholly.
We gotta. Sorry, I just want to make sure I credit people, because Raz is actually the reason that Harry and I encountered each other.
Yeah, it was when he was streaming. He was like looking at
giving
other
critiques on people's video essays.
Wow.
It was really
Thank you, Raz.
But yeah, it's a change that I think is happening slowly. There are some people who have fully embraced it, but I think where it came from before was this very deep-seated desire by essayist communities, essayists, I won't say communities yet, because I think for a long time essayists weren't in communities with each other in how we worked. And I think it is because we were very much afraid of being the rage reviewer or a drama channel, or like that anything we would do would be taken as hostility toward another person doing what we do. And because of that, we chose to self-censor, to not speak on other people's work, even if it was clearly about the same topic and the same idea, because there would be trends where everyone was making videos on the same general idea, but just not saying that we're talking about the idea said in that other person's video.
It would drive me up the wall. And I think this, when I started, it was something I thought about a lot, which is that there's a lot of people that like basically didn't want to say that they were clearly influenced by X work of art. And what I realized is I think it's the same type of insecurity that you see amongst like AAA video games, of like, we're like films too, we're serious art, and like there's this like almost desperation to it but like they also don't want to their reference point for serious art is other mediums versus my approach. And I think a lot of the approach the people that we all work with and things, and the shift that has occurred is that my approach is just, I treat video essays as no different than any other work of art that I reference. And if you look at my videos, you can see that. Like, I think Queer Relativity is a particularly strong example of that, because I touch on, I think, 3 or 4 other video essays in the exact same way that I'm using every film or book or anything else that I'm referencing in that video. And it's because I don't think you need to sit down in a video, and this is why I kind of like, not that those videos are bad or anything, but the videos where people are like art video essays, art, like, we need to have a conversation about it, and I'm like, I'd rather just do the praxis of already, I know it, so I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah.
and I think that is a much stronger statement than I swear it's art, guys. I swear it's art. Like there's
What
that,
is a
that sort of
video
cloying
essay?
desire.
Then you have Alex over here. Some of
can
his
start with
videos are
Montaigne.
literally poems.
Yeah,
They're
I've done
gorgeous.
poems. I've
That's
done
good.
poems
Yeah, I
and
like
I call them video essays. Because they are. And I have very good arguments as to why,
Hell yeah,
and I don't
dude.
need to say any of them now. But
I'm not gonna argue with you, bitch. They're fucking video
Uh,
essays.
but I mean, here's the thing: I've been absorbing some of the arguments from the other essayist Discord. There's a few out there. I'm only a part of two. The essay library. I've done their last 3 collaborations. I've submitted something for them, so I guess I can say that I'm a part of that. I should.
You're in
I
the
suppose.
regulars channel. That's how you know.
I am.
I hang out there too.
It's the secret channel. Don't tell anyone. It's the regulars channel. Shout out to anybody in the
But so if we go back to like, there's a through line from the philosopher Montaigne, who was basically writing in such a way as to discredit both the requirements that the scholastics and the humanists had for what qualified as philosophical writing. And he was like, all of it is philosophical. I wrote a list of everything I ate this week. This is a treatise. And it was just like, it's an essay is, as the verb says, a try. It is an attempt. It is trying to be subjective and objective in equal measure, not discrediting either side of information. And I think that's why this category of what is an essay is, you should just say that it is inherently broad, because the point of an essay is to not conform to established notions of what an art is. To just do your own thing and let it stand for itself, and value will come out of it. And so that's kind of a part of what I'm doing now, which I think is the thing Darkfry has been wanting to push me towards this whole time, is the fact that I am releasing 100 video essays this year.
God.
Which I wrote last year.
Dang.
120 hour and 27 minutes for Dark Friday.
There's actually more than 100. I just said 100 because it's easy, but there's slightly more than 100, and I've not revealed that. I wrote a little bit.
know that?
A video
I wrote a
Gems
little bit
exclusive.
extra.
You had to make some more.
Sorry, I had to do that voice.
I wrote a little bit extra, and then I also decided to cut out the machinimas that I did for my Warframe videos, where I was just telling the tale of Tanabata and the tale of Chang'e, and I separated them to be their own thing. And then a few others, like I have these little I had an artsy intro, I had an artsy middle. Darkfry, you voiced in the artsy intro to the series.
I sure did.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I voiced in it. You sent me lines to record. I recorded them, and then I watched it, and I was like, all right.
Yeah.
I have a weird thing
Sure.
with just because I do so much voice stuff, and I have a very messed up memory due to head stuff. I often forget that I've done things for people, and I get jump scared by my voice in videos where I'll click on a video and I'll just be
How
like,
did that get in
"Oh,
there?
what a great video! It's so cool! Oh, I'm in it." and it's
That
really
happens.
it's also so cool because like at the same time I'm often sitting there going like, wow, this is such an amazing work of art, and I'm like, I was a part of this work of art. That's really cool. And there's other times too where I've forgotten that I gave like a bunch of text feedback on something, and then I'll watch it and
You'll remember your own words coming out of
Yeah, and
someone
I'll be
else's
like,
mouth.
oh,
Yeah.
that's a me
I've
sentence.
had that.
One of my favorite things though is when I've done neither of those things, but someone I've influenced, I can hear my my language or my approach or my perspective coming through their language and their approach in their video, and and I think that kind of fuels some of the sort of jokiness that I have about being like an eldritch being or whatever, because I think it's kind of funny as an idea, both as sort of a mockery of that genre's tendency towards misunderstanding of mental illness, but also just as the funniness to me of like infecting people's minds with my.
Oh yeah, I'm not joking when I say that that my goal is to infect every YouTube video.
Yes.
I
Dark Fry
have
and I.
Put Dark Fry in your videos.
so
Either
here's the
my
secret.
voice
Easy.
or my presence or my image.
And
Dark Fry,
convenient.
I have placed Dark Fry in 3 of my video essays.
Dark Fry, I have no idea how many videos of mine you're in. It is too many to count.
I need to put you 2 in more videos. I need to put you 3 in more videos.
I have a video that has gone up. The way I wrote it was inspired by the formatting of Queer Relativity. And then I delivered it with a really terrible Missouri accent, and it lost that vibe entirely. But the way I wrote it on paper was supposed to be this like bilinear track of me experiencing the game and talking about the history of YouTube and like treating video games and video essays as art on the platform next to each other. But then something about I took on a Missouri accent, and then it was just like, oh, you can't tell at all anymore.
This is a really
This is something
weird
else.
way for
But I like the other like earlier, I don't remember when, go find it. I think it was it in I have a
what if
question.
one of the aeronauts
Yeah.
that
So
presented Queer Relativity was just, what if one of them just had an accent for some reason?
There's something like, oh, who's the guy from King of the Hill? That kind of voice.
Boom,
Oh,
how I want to get
Oh, that guy?
that bear, I'm gonna get it back.
okay, but Kiki was asking, not Kiki from Transparency, Kiki from Kiki Crazed, who does great
The
video essays.
aforementioned video essay library.
Good
library
clarification.
sort of head. There's many wonderful Kikis that do video essays. Sort of asked
Kiki
for like
means party. It's slang for party.
Thank you for that fun fact, Alex.
You're welcome.
asked for like 10 video essays that could represent the broad space, and I was sitting there, just going by. If you go and read the list, I have it as the last for a reason, but like going back and forth on including Queer Relativity or one of the like dozens of things that it's inspired, and I just was finally like, I kind of have to include it because
It's
there's
Obama
like
medal
so
time, baby.
yeah,
It
like
is.
I was like, you know what? I know it looks like a vanity pick, and I get that, but like,
No!
you
include that video.
There's a factual statement, but the factual statement is a shit ton of people have said that they
Don't
made
even
certain
don't
works.
even fucking
Yeah.
justify it. Don't
Directly-
even. I don't want to hear
No, but
your
I-
reason. I don't want to hear your reason. Just include it.
but
Just fucking do it.
But because like I feel like what I have influenced people towards, both in like directly working on other people's stuff and influencing in that way, I've been hired to basically do that at times.
Doesn't matter,
is
baby.
pushing people to do very strange structure, which is my favorite thing, because like I like to push the boundaries of things in interesting directions, or execute something traditional in a really unique way, or like I want to play with it. I want to play with art and what it's allowed to be in a way that is interesting. And I also just think it's interesting. I do think that part of why my writing is so weirdly structured is definitely a mix of the stew of issues I but like what I find cool is that like video essays now as a category is basically just a broad genre of art.
Very broad.
In a in a way that most people know it exists. You know, it's become somewhat like mainstream enough that like not everybody I encounter, but most people know vaguely of a video essay or watched a video essay. You know what I mean? Even if they don't watch the genre consistently. And I think that's really interesting how it's shifted. But it also, like, when you say it, there's like so many different things. And so when I was picking those 10, I was just trying to think of like as many sort of vague categories of style and stuff.
I did notice that because when I answered that question, I was like, there are too many niches of essay
Yeah.
to try to represent essays. And then you came in with a list being like, well,
Even in
this close
100
enough.
videos, you can do it.
Yeah. I think it also speaks to a little bit how our relationship to these essays changes so much after we put them out. And it just keeps changing the longer the longer something we've made is already out there. I know I've had several different thoughts about how I feel about the Warframe videos that I've made, and I'm writing the next one even as I say I dislike I have this sort of resentment towards it. But the whole impetus for me writing these 100 video essays and just going, I'm not going to even bother with my own style or voice of what I did before. I said I'm not going to. The first idea was I'm going to do a 1-minute video essay collab with myself based on our Hot Cider collab. And as I started writing them, I was like, oh, writing only a 1-minute long thing is actually getting way harder now. And I'm back. I'm out of my writing slump, my post Warframe video writing slump, where I was just like, I have no ideas. I have nothing else to draw from. And I got out of it simply by just writing anything. And that anything is then became, well, I'm trying to collab with myself. And then that anything became that I'm not limiting myself to any particular voice anymore. I'm just going to say my own ideas, and I'm going to rely on me being who I am to have it be that intersection between video games and philosophy that I put so much effort into making sure every video was in the past. And personally, I think that they're a heck of a lot better. And I only think they're better insofar as they're more honest. I think production-wise, I took a lot of shortcuts. I had to take shortcuts. Writing 100 of these, some of them are more than like 40 minutes long.
And they are like full videos as well, right? That's probably an important thing to bring up.
And so like some of them are full essays, others are haiku. Some are tanka that I wrote with Zolty Boy. I ran out of ideas at one point at the end because I was like, oh no, I need to write 7 more before December 31st, and there's only 6 more days. And I hit up the Discord and I was like, someone give me topics.
Get me.
I will.
Give me a topic.
I need topics. Someone.
and like, you know, to Snaker got me some topics. I wrote on those, and then like I was once again I was out of things to say, and then I just had one last idea for the final video, which was the words video games versus music. And it was like, I hate how people talk about music in video games. Why aren't you talking about how it's a part of a game? And so it was, and so that became the last video, and the last video was also very long, and that's the one that's sitting there as a scheduled premiere to show that the endpoint is there, it's ready, it'll be there, and everything
still looking for the
in between.
Darkfire, you're still looking for the what stupid anime game is it?
What?
what's it called? Octopath 2 or whatever. I don't know. You're still
Yeah.
looking for the soundtrack for that, aren't you?
Oh yeah, fucking upload the soundtrack of Octopath
Literally,
Traveler
this
to
podcast
fucking
started
YouTube
what, like
and
6 months
streaming-
ago?
and streaming
It's still not on
fucking
YouTube.
music. I've watched the fucking Tim Rogers Kotaku video on Octopath on games of the on roasting games of the year of 2018. And the roast that he had for Octopath Traveler was that the music was not available on streaming services, and it's still true today, and it's
still not
still
bad.
true for the sequel.
Can't put it on
Fucking
YouTube.
upload the soundtrack, goddamn you! What's wrong with you?
Have to resort to our
Dark
underhanded,
Anyway.
so
underhanded
angry
tactics.
today. He's just like.
Anyway, I'm ending the episode now.
What? What?
Well, I mean,
It's
we
true,
say
we
what?
have
How
gone
long has
40
it been?
minutes
Like
over
2
time.
hours?
We have gone 40 minutes
oh.
over time.
My
Episode's
apologies.
over.
We're only 5 hours
No,
short
no
of a Warframe
apologies.
video.
This is great. This is
Get
really
out of
good.
here.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I've been so excited to join and be a guest on Video Gems. Like I said, I have listened to every episode, and I am a fan. So keep up the good work. These podcasts inspire me to write essays, and there are so many of my videos that only exist because this podcast exists. And I want you all to know that.
I can't
that's
be mad at
wonderful.
you, Alex. You're a sweetheart.
You're the best.